The conference room felt smaller than usual that afternoon. Thomas Keating stood by the window, his designer suit catching the late sun perfectly. Patricia from HR sat beside him with her laptop open, fingers hovering over keys like she was actually typing something important. She wasn't. "Madeline, we've decided to terminate your position effective immediately," Thomas said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. "You're not aligned with our company values." My throat went tight. The office where I'd spent 3 years building my career suddenly felt airless. I caught my reflection in the glass behind Thomas, calm on the surface while everything inside me screamed. I reached for my badge, feeling the weight of the lanyard in my palm. As I handed it over, Thomas smiled. Actually smiled. "Next time, maybe don't go poking around in places you don't belong." My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. I picked up the termination packet from the table, my hands steady even though my heart was hammering. One thought burned behind my eyes as I stood to leave. "You just made a mistake." I walked through the lobby carrying a cardboard box. Inside was a photo of my analytics team, the coffee mug that said, "Numbers don't lie," and a plant someone gave me last Christmas. The security guard wouldn't meet my eyes as I passed. "My name is Madeline Hart. I'm 31 years old, and until 10 minutes ago, I was the senior revenue analyst at Grayson Dynamics. I'd worked there for 3 years, climbing from junior analyst to senior position. I was good at my job. Really good." The elevator doors closed, and I watched the floor numbers descend. Each ding felt like a countdown to something I couldn't name yet. Outside, the October wind cut through my blazer. I stood on the sidewalk, watching people rush past with their coffee cups and important phone calls. They had no idea that the sleek glass building behind me was rotting from the inside. But I knew. And soon everyone else would too. I shifted the box in my arms and started walking. 6 weeks earlier, everything had seemed normal. I'd been sitting in the quarterly all-hands meeting, my notebook open, ready to take notes on company performance. Thomas stood at the front of the room, his presentation glowing on the screen behind him. "We've exceeded revenue targets by 18% this quarter," he announced. The room erupted in applause. Then he paused, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. "Of course, we have some team members who prefer to focus on problems rather than progress. Some bean counters who think they're heroes for crying fraud over every little accounting decision." The room laughed. Not everyone, but enough. My face burned hot, but I forced my lips into a smile. My fingers gripped my pen so tight the plastic creaked. Beside me, my teammate Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He knew Thomas was talking about me. Everyone knew. After the meeting, I went straight to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I didn't cry. I just stood there, breathing, letting the rage coil tight in my chest where no one could see it. It had started 3 weeks before that meeting. I was working late, running monthly revenue reports like I always did. The office was quiet except for the hum of computers and the cleaning crew vacuuming down the hall. I pulled up the contract database, cross-referencing booking dates with actual signed agreements. That's when I saw it. 3 contracts, all dated for September 30th, all logged as revenue for Q3. But when I opened the actual files, the signature dates were from October 2nd. My stomach dropped. Backdating contracts to hit quarterly targets wasn't just wrong. It was fraud. I checked again, thinking maybe I'd made a mistake. The dates were clear. Someone had deliberately moved revenue from one quarter to another to make the numbers look better. I sat back in my chair, staring at my screen. The numbers glowed in the darkness. Numbers don't lie, but people do. I exported the data to my personal drive and went home. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I went to my manager, Olivia. She was organizing files on her desk when I knocked on her doorframe. "Hey Mads, what's up?" she asked without looking up. "I found something weird in the Q3 revenue reports," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Some contracts are backdated. The signatures don't match the booking dates we recorded." Olivia finally looked at me. Her expression shifted from friendly to guarded in half a second. "That's not really your concern, Madeline. Leadership handles revenue recognition. Your job is to run the reports, not question the strategy. But if the dates are wrong, they're not wrong, she cut me off. They're adjusted for business purposes. It's complicated. Just focus on your deliverables, okay? She turned back to her computer. The conversation was over. I walked back to my desk, my hands shaking. Adjusted for business purposes. That wasn't accounting. That was covering up fraud. 2 days later, Patricia from HR called me into her office. She smiled too much as she gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Madeline, we've received some feedback about your recent behavior," she began, pulling up a document on her screen. "Some team members feel you've been disruptive, questioning leadership decisions, creating unnecessary tension." "I was asking about contract dates," I said carefully. "That's literally my job." Patricia nodded like she understood, but her eyes were cold. "I know you want to be thorough, but there's a way to raise concerns. Going directly to Olivia with accusations wasn't appropriate. Next time, use the proper channels." "What are the proper channels?" She handed me a printed form. "Submit any concerns through the ethics hotline." "But Madeline, between you and me, sometimes it's better to trust that leadership knows what they're doing. You're smart. Don't throw away your career over idealism." I took the form and left. The message was clear. Shut up or get out. That weekend I couldn't stop thinking about those contracts. I logged into my work email from home, something I'd never done before. I told myself I was just checking, just making sure I hadn't missed something obvious. I found a forwarded email thread buried in my archives. It was from Thomas to the CFO, Malcolm Reeves. The subject line read, "Q3 Close Strategy." Inside was a casual conversation about moving certain deals forward to hit targets. Thomas had written, "Let's be creative here. We've done it before, we'll do it again. Just make sure the paperwork looks clean." Malcolm had replied with a thumbs-up emoji. My hands were shaking as I screenshot the email and saved it to a folder on my personal laptop. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. This was policy. I sat in my apartment, the laptop screen glowing in the dark, and realized I was holding proof of securities fraud. Monday morning I ran into Leo, a quiet intern from the finance department, in the break room. He was making coffee, looking exhausted. "Long weekend?" I asked, trying to sound normal. He glanced around like he was checking for cameras. "Yeah. Had to help Malcolm pull together some last-minute board materials. Lots of adjustments." Something in his tone caught my attention. "Adjustments?" Leo hesitated, then lowered his voice. "I probably shouldn't say this, but I overheard Thomas and Malcolm joking about creative accounting on Friday. They didn't know I was in the conference room setting up the projector." My pulse quickened. What exactly did they say? Something about making the numbers dance. Thomas said investors don't care about details, they care about growth. Leo poured his coffee quickly. "Anyway, I've got to get back. Just be careful, Madeline. People are noticing you've been asking questions." He left before I could respond. I stood there holding my empty mug, understanding crystallizing in my mind. This wasn't just Thomas. This was systemic. Over the next week things changed. Subtle at first, then obvious. My access to certain shared folders disappeared. When I asked IT about it, they said it was a system update. My invitations to weekly revenue meetings stopped coming. When I mentioned it to Olivia, she said those meetings were being restructured. Co-workers who used to chat with me in the kitchen started finding reasons to leave when I entered. Marcus stopped sitting near me at lunch. The analyst who shared my cubicle wall requested a desk move. I was being isolated. Deliberately. Professionally erased. One morning I came in to find my shared project folder completely empty. Hundreds of files gone. I checked the audit log and saw they'd been deleted at 2:47 a.m. by an admin account. I sat at my desk, staring at the empty folder, and realized they were preparing to push me out. They were eliminating my access, my connections, my proof that I'd ever contributed anything valuable. That night, I went home and created an encrypted backup drive. I started saving everything I could access while I still could. A week later, Thomas cornered me after a board donor dinner. I'd stayed late to finish a report, and most of the office was empty. He appeared in my cubicle entrance, his tie loosened, smelling faintly of wine. "Madeline," he said, his voice friendly but his eyes hard. "You're a smart woman. Really smart. That's why I wanted to talk to you privately." I saved my document and turned to face him. "About what?" "About your future here." He leaned against the cubicle wall. "You've got potential. Real potential. But you're letting idealism cloud your judgment. This industry isn't about perfect compliance. It's about results, growth, making investors happy. Even if the numbers are fake." His smile vanished. "Be very careful with words like that. Fraud is a serious accusation. The kind that destroys careers. Your career." We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he straightened up and adjusted his tie. "Think about what matters to you, Madeline. Your principles or your paycheck." He walked away, leaving me alone in the dark office. That night, I opened a new encrypted folder on my laptop and titled it, Evidence. I started working systematically. Every evening after everyone left, I'd pull up revenue reports and compare them to actual signed contracts. The pattern was everywhere once I knew what to look for. 17% of Q3 revenue had been artificially inflated through backdated contracts, premature recognition, and side letters that promised clients risk-free returns if they signed early. None of that was disclosed to investors. I found emails where Thomas approved deals that hadn't actually closed. I found calendar invites where Malcolm scheduled revenue smoothing sessions. I found internal memos that used phrases like aggressive recognition and flexible interpretation. I printed everything at a copy shop 3 blocks from my apartment. I mailed copies to my parents' house in Ohio. I uploaded encrypted files to 3 different cloud services. I was building a case, piece by piece, knowing that if anyone discovered what I was doing, I'd be fired immediately. But I also knew that if I didn't document everything now, it would disappear the moment they pushed me out. The question wasn't if they'd fire me. It was when. I called my college friend Neil on a Saturday morning. He'd gone to law school and now worked at a corporate firm downtown. We met at a coffee shop far from Grayson's office. "You sounded worried on the phone," Neil said, stirring sugar into his espresso. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The backdated contracts, the emails, the isolation at work, Thomas's threat. Neil listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with every detail. When I finished, he set down his cup carefully. "Madeline, if you're right about this, we're not talking about internal discipline. This is securities fraud. Federal crime territory. The SEC doesn't mess around with this stuff. So what do I do?" "You need to file a whistleblower complaint. Document everything, which it sounds like you're already doing. But understand something, once you report this, your life is going to get complicated. They'll investigate Grayson, and that means you'll be part of it. Depositions, interviews, maybe testimony." I thought about Thomas's smirk, about the fake numbers, about every investor being lied to. I can't just ignore it. Neil nodded slowly. "Then let me connect you with someone who specializes in whistleblower cases. But Madeline, be ready. Companies like Grayson don't go down quietly." I went back to work Monday morning and acted like nothing had changed. I smiled at people who ignored me. I attended meetings where I wasn't invited to speak. I ran reports that I knew were built on lies. Thomas seemed pleased with my silence. At an executive update meeting, he actually complimented my recent analysis work like he'd won, like I'd learned my lesson. I thanked him professionally and took detailed notes on every word he said. During a lunch meeting with investors, I watched him present revenue projections that I knew were impossible without more fraud. He was confident, charming, completely convincing. The investors ate it up. After the meeting, He bragged to Malcolm in the hallway about getting verbal approval from the board to pursue even more aggressive growth targets. I was standing at the printer 10 feet away. He didn't even notice me. That night, I added his exact words to my timeline document. Every date, every meeting, every false promise. The evidence was becoming overwhelming. I filed the whistleblower report on Wednesday. Confidential, detailed, devastating. Then I waited. The complaint included everything. 57 pages of documentation, emails, calendar screenshots, contract comparisons, and testimony about Thomas's direct involvement. I'd included the timeline showing exactly when contracts were backdated, who approved them, and how much revenue was falsely recognized. The SEC confirmation email arrived in my personal inbox the next morning. They'd received my report. An investigator would be in touch. I closed my laptop and got ready for work, knowing everything was about to change. The question was just timing. I organized my desk that week, backing up personal files, cleaning out old notes. My coworkers probably thought I was just being efficient. Really, I was preparing for the inevitable. On Friday afternoon, Olivia sent me a calendar invite. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Conference room B. Attendees. Me, Thomas, Patricia from HR. I accepted the meeting without comment. That night, I packed my personal items from my desk into my car. The coffee mug, the team photo, the plant. Everything that mattered. When I arrived Monday morning, I brought only my badge and my phone. The box was already waiting in my car. The meeting was short. Thomas delivered his rehearsed lines about values and alignment. Patricia pretended to take notes. I handed over my badge without argument. When Thomas made his comment about poking around, I met his eyes directly. Let him see that I wasn't broken. Let him think he'd won. I walked to my desk, put my laptop and phone on the empty surface, and carried out the box I'd prepared. The security guard escorted me through the lobby like I was a criminal. Outside, the city felt different. Louder. Sharper. I put the box in my trunk and sat in my car for a long moment, watching employees stream into the building for their morning meetings. They had no idea what was coming. I drove to a diner across town, ordered coffee, and pulled out my phone. I had 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Called it back. Ms. Hart. This is Investigator Warren from the SEC. We've reviewed your complaint and need to schedule an interview. How soon can you meet? I smiled for the first time in weeks. How's tomorrow morning? The silence after losing your job is strange. No morning alarm, no commute, no meetings filling your calendar. Just empty hours and the weight of uncertainty. I spent the first week in a fog, sleeping badly, checking my bank account obsessively, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. My savings would cover rent for 3 months, maybe 4 if I was careful. But every time doubt crept in, I'd remember Thomas's smirk as he fired me. I'd remember those fake numbers, those lies told to investors who trusted Grayson with their money. I started applying for jobs. Temp positions, contract work, anything in accounting or finance. The responses were slow. Word travels fast in corporate circles. And being fired from Grayson carried implications even if no one said it directly. Thomas's face appeared on the cover of a local business magazine. Visionary CEO of the Year. The article praised his leadership and Grayson's unprecedented growth trajectory. I bought the magazine, cut out his picture, and pinned it to my fridge. Not out of anger anymore. Out of patience. Because I knew something the magazine didn't. This was just the calm before everything fell apart. 2 weeks after my firing, I took a temp position doing bookkeeping for a small consulting firm. The pay was less than half my Grayson salary, but it kept me busy and paid some bills. My nights were spent pouring wine at my friend's bistro downtown. It was humbling work, but the tips were decent and the owner, Marcus, different Marcus, didn't ask questions about my resume gap. I'd gone from senior analyst to temp bookkeeper and part-time server. Some people might have felt ashamed about that. Felt focused. During my shifts at the bistro, I'd overhear business conversations. Tech startups celebrating funding rounds, executives complaining about board pressure, entrepreneurs pitching ideas. The city's business community talking, networking, dealing. One night, a group from Grayson came in for dinner. I recognized them from the marketing department. They didn't recognize me in my server apron. I poured their wine and listened to them gossip about recent changes at the company. Leadership seems stressed lately, one woman said. Lots of closed-door meetings. I heard external auditors are coming back, another added. That's weird, right? We just had our annual audit. I refilled their glasses and said nothing. But later in the kitchen I smiled. The email arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Sender, anonymous. Subject, thought you should know. I opened it carefully, half expecting spam or worse. Instead, I found a single sentence and an attachment. External auditors are back. Asking lots of questions about Q3 contracts. The attachment was a photo of an internal meeting agenda. The top item read, Revenue Recognition Review. Urgent. I stared at the email for a long time. Someone inside Grayson knew what was happening. Someone wanted me to know the investigation was moving forward. I didn't reply. I saved the email to my encrypted drive and went back to work. That night at the bistro, I served tables with a lightness I hadn't felt in months. The wheels were turning. Slowly, quietly, but turning. Thomas thought he'd silenced me by firing me. He'd actually just removed the one obstacle that might have made me hesitate. I had nothing left to lose and everything to expose. A week later, my phone buzzed with a message from Shannon, a former teammate from Grayson. We'd been friendly before my firing, but she'd stopped responding to my texts after I was let go. Her message was short. Can we talk? Not on company devices. We met at a park near her apartment. Shannon looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her usual energy gone. They're investigating everything, she said quietly. Every contract, every booking decision, every email about revenue. Malcolm hired a crisis management firm. Thomas has lawyers shadowing him in meetings. What are they asking about? Side letters. Backdated agreements. Verbal approvals that were never documented. Your name came up in yesterday's meeting. Shannon looked at me directly. They asked if you'd raised concerns before you left. I told them the truth. That you'd questioned numbers and were pushed out for it. My throat tightened. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Her voice cracked slightly. You were right, Madeline. About everything. And I was too scared to back you up when it mattered. I'm not making that mistake again. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Shannon pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of a whiteboard from a finance meeting. It was labeled Q4 Revenue Smoothing Plan. They were still doing it. Even with auditors circling, they were planning more fraud. Grayson's LinkedIn page started showing cracks. The VP of Sales posted a vague message about pursuing new opportunities. 2 board members quietly updated their profiles to remove Grayson from their current positions. Olivia, my former manager, posted something stranger. Grateful for challenging quarters that teach us resilience. The comments below were full of concerned emojis and questions she didn't answer. Meanwhile, Thomas doubled down. He appeared on a podcast talking about Grayson's vision, posted a company update about strongest pipeline in company history, and hosted a client appreciation event that made the business news. He was projecting confidence while everything crumbled behind the scenes. I recognized the strategy because I'd seen it in financial fraud cases before. Fake it until you can't anymore. The tension was building. I could feel it in the nervous energy of Shannon's texts, in the quiet mentions in industry circles, in the way Grayson's stock price started showing weird volatility. Something was about to break. The only question was when. I kept working my temp job, kept serving wine at night, kept checking my phone for news. Waiting felt almost peaceful now. I'd done my part. The rest was up to institutions bigger than me. The call came on a Monday morning. I was at my temp job, reconciling expense reports, when Shannon texted me. Turn on CNBC. I pulled up the live stream on my phone. The breaking news banner read, SEC launches investigation into Grayson Dynamics revenue practices. My hands shook as I read the crawl. Federal regulators were investigating potential securities fraud. Trading was halted. The company had issued a statement saying they were cooperating fully. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Hart. This is Investigator Warren. I wanted you to hear this from me first. We've opened a formal investigation. Subpoenas were served this morning. Your evidence was instrumental in building our case. I couldn't speak for a moment. Everything I'd documented, everything I'd risked had mattered. What happens now? Finally asked. Now we dig deeper. And Ms. Hart. Thank you. Cases like these don't move forward without people like you willing to come forward. I hung up and sat at my desk, staring at the numbers on my computer screen. Numbers that actually meant what they said. Numbers that told the truth. The next 72 hours were chaos I watched from a distance. The business news covered it constantly. Grayson's stock plummeted 42% before trading was halted again. Law firms announced class action lawsuits on behalf of investors. Malcolm Reeves, the CFO, resigned for personal health reasons on Tuesday afternoon. His resignation letter, leaked to the press, included phrases like difference in judgment and strategic direction, but everyone knew what it really meant. On Wednesday, Thomas held an emergency town hall with remaining employees. Someone recorded it and posted clips online. He looked pale, angry, cornered. He blamed overzealous regulators and misunderstandings about standard accounting practices. No one was buying it anymore. By Thursday, auditors had set up a war room in Grayson's headquarters. Boxes of documents were being carried out to waiting vans. Employees started updating their LinkedIn profiles with former in front of their Grayson titles. I watched all of this from my apartment, eating takeout and processing what I'd set in motion. Part of me felt satisfaction. A larger part just felt tired. This wasn't really about revenge. It was about the truth finally being louder than the lies. The official announcement came exactly 3 weeks after my firing. Thomas Keating resigned as CEO to pursue other opportunities and spend time with family. The board issued a statement thanking him for his service and announcing an interim CEO while they searched for permanent leadership. The industry translation was immediate. He'd been forced out. The board had no choice once federal investigations reached a certain point. Grayson's stock was now trading at 62% below its peak. Major clients pulled contracts. Partnership deals evaporated. Vendors demanded payment up front instead of the usual terms. The company that had seemed unstoppable 3 months ago was collapsing in real time. I read the news at the bistro during my break, sitting in the alley behind the kitchen. A line from Thomas's resignation letter stood out. I'm proud of what we built together. What he'd built was a house of cards. I'd just been the one who documented it before the wind came. My phone buzzed. Email from a corporate recruiter. Senior position available in compliance division at established firm. Your background and integrity highly valued. Interested in discussing. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back a single word. Yes. The job offer came through 2 weeks later. Director of Compliance at Sterling Analytics, a firm with a reputation for actually caring about ethics. The salary was 20% higher than what I'd made at Grayson. Title was better. The office had windows. On my first day, the CFO personally walked me through the department I'd be leading. She stopped at my new office and gestured inside. We brought you in specifically because of what you did at Grayson, she said directly. We need people who understand that integrity isn't negotiable. Your job here is to design systems that make fraud impossible and reporting safe. Can you do that? I thought about Thomas's smirk, about Patricia's cold warnings, about being walked out of my own office with a cardboard box. Then I thought about Investigator Warren's phone call, about Shannon telling the truth in interviews, about numbers that finally meant what they said. Yes, I told her. I can do that. That afternoon, I unpacked my box at my new desk. The coffee mug that said, "Numbers don't lie," went next to my computer. The team photo went on the shelf. And my old Grayson badge, I tucked into my desk drawer. Not as a reminder of pain. As proof that I'd survived and chosen truth over comfort. 6 weeks later, I walked past Grayson Tower on my way to a compliance conference. The building looked smaller somehow, less impressive than I remembered. The lobby was emptier. The security guard was different. A for lease. Multiple floors available sign hung in the window where the company logo used to gleam. I paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the glass facade. Somewhere up there, Thomas had smiled while firing me. Somewhere up there, I discovered fraud that destroyed a company from the inside. I pulled out my phone and deleted his magazine photo from my files. I didn't need that reminder anymore. My calendar notification buzzed. Meeting in 30 minutes. Ethics Framework Design Workshop. I was leading the session, teaching other companies how to build cultures where people like me didn't have to choose between careers and conscience. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in Grayson's glass doors. Same face, different life. Stronger now. Clearer. Thomas had taught me what integrity costs. I taught him what it's worth. I kept walking, no backward glance, toward a future I'd built from truth instead of lies. The city moved around me, full of numbers and deals and choices. And I knew, finally, that some numbers don't lie because people like me won't let them.